We just wrapped up our panel sponsored by the Entertainment Law Subcommittee on how to get into entertainment law. So we had a great panelist of both in-house and firm attorneys giving tips to law students and early career attorneys about how to break into the industry. By show of hands, how many of you in the room are law students? No. Okay, great. And then how many people would describe themselves as, I would say, early career, maybe 1 to 4 years out? Okay, great. We just want to make sure the topics that we're getting into on tonight's panel sort of cover the different places where people are in their respective careers. So, my name is Erika Stallings. I am an attorney at Broadcast Music, Inc. Prior to joining BMI, I worked in intellectual property litigation and transactions at a couple different firms in New York City. I will be moderating this evening's panel. I just want to give a quick shout out to Jason Clark and the Metropolitan Black Bar Association for helping to bring this event together. And also a thank you to Davis and Gilbert, who's sponsoring this evening's event, including the reception. The format for the evening, we have some really great panelists lined up who will tell you all about themselves pretty soon. We'll have about an hour for questions and Q&A, and then there'll be some more networking from about 8 to 8:30. And we, as I think our panelists will talk about, networking is really important, so if you can, definitely stay afterwards. And get to know some folks. So if everybody could just really quickly go down the line, and then we'll get into the discussion.
All right. Good evening.
Hello. There we go. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Jefferson. I'm an associate attorney at Frankfurt, Kernet, Klein & Sells here in New York City. I practice transactional entertainment law. I have a background where I used to work in-house and then transitioned to the firm. I'm a graduate of St. John's University School of Law.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. I am an associate here at Davis Gilbert. My name is Georgia Thompson. Prior to joining Davis Gilbert, I was at JPMorgan Chase for almost 4 years. I practiced in intellectual property and the marketing legal groups there. And prior to that, I was at a really small law firm out on Long Island for a couple years. And I know that some people are going to be curious about, what if your law firm doesn't have an IP practice, which it did not. So I had to transition from a firm that didn't to in-house at JPMorgan. So I'm happy to talk about that and answer any questions with regards to that. In terms of school, I went to Hofstra University for undergrad. I studied broadcast journalism, and I stayed at Hofstra and went there for law school as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine Marie Lauture, and I am an associate at Cowan Debates, Abrahams and Shepherd LLP in New York City as well. I'm in the litigation group as well as the copyright and trademark groups. Prior to, I did several years of insurance defense litigation, and before that, I had some transactional experience. I also went to Hofstra undergrad and Brooklyn Law for law school.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Klori Clanton. I'm an associate counsel of business and legal affairs at Viacom. Prior to joining Viacom in July of 2018, I actually practiced commercial litigation and intellectual property law at a mid-sized firm called Rifkin Radler. I was based out of their New Jersey office, but practiced also in New York as well. I am a 2015 graduate of Cardozo Law School, and I also attended George Washington University for undergrad.
Cool. So my first question, and feel free to jump in, is I sometimes just get a lot of questions from people, or I get a lot of emails from people who are like, I want to be an entertainment attorney. And entertainment law is a really broad field. So I guess just to get started, sort of what do each of you sort of define as entertainment law?
So like you said, entertainment law is very broad. And when I was in when I was in undergrad, when I was in law school, I used to hold myself out to say, I want to be an entertainment attorney. And a lot of people I speak to say the same thing, but it's tough to just define entertainment law. There's so many different fields that go into it. For example, my firm, we have transactional film and television. we have litigation, we have trademark, we have fashion. Then there's corporate practices within each of those groups. So entertainment law is very broad in my eyes. And when trying to figure out which aspect of entertainment, and when figuring out your career, try to hammer down something within entertainment law, because if you called me today and say, hey, I have this big trademark issue, I wouldn't know how to help you. But if you called me and said, I'm looking to finance a movie, then I would be able to help you. So, entertainment law is very broad. Each section within it has a certain skill set. So, it's tough to define it with one simple definition in my eyes.
Yeah, I would say, just to kind of piggyback off of that and reiterate it, it's a big bucket of legal issues, right? So for me, when I thought about, I want to be an entertainment lawyer, and I actually had a professor at Lauture that said, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, you don't really understand what entertainment law entails then. But for me, in terms of getting into the practice, the profession, being attracted and interested in the entertainment industry, for me it was all about content, right? The distribution of content, licensing, participating in creating the content, posting the content, all of the different distribution streams. So I've always taken a very broad view and broad perspective of it, and made sure that I understood all the different types of legal issues that go into it, even if I'm not an employment lawyer, knowing that maybe a contract that I'm working on, implicates some type of employment issue, or, SAG-AFTRA issue, music licensing issue.
You wanna go, or?
Okay. So I guess my definition is the same as Sean and Jordan. I would say that entertainment law is unique in that it covers various areas of law as well as various sectors of entertainment. So it encompasses labor and employment, it encompasses contracts, it encompasses litigation. So there are various areas of law you can practice, which is also helpful in transitioning if you start out practicing in a different area of law and you want to switch into entertainment. And just like Sean had said earlier, it can cover music, it covers TV and film, it covers fine arts, and each area of entertainment are different, and you have different legal issues within those areas of entertainment.
Yeah, the only thing I will add is just sort of, how does one go about finding their niche area of practice? For me, I was a journalism and communication major in undergrad, and then went into advertising at Ogilvy, and that I think was my first sort of interest, right? I was in the business in that sense, and copyrights and trademark were coming up in terms of a general conversation, and I had a desire to go to law school because I wanted to add the legal knowledge on top of that. So for me, I started law school, and I was like, okay, I want to do IP law because I know that that's relevant to my personal interest and passion. And that sort of led me also into pursuing internships with television companies. I also did some stuff in terms of like a small law firm and doing IP law. And I think you kind of find your way, but I would just sort of round out our conversation by saying follow what you're interested in. Like if you love music, that might be a path for you to try. If you really love television or film, maybe look at that first. And then it's okay to change your mind, but definitely find that niche area.
So Christine, I want to come back to you. Well, I think everyone will sort of get really in-depth to their career path, but I'm going to start with Christine, because I think a lot of times when you're in law school, maybe you aren't able to land that first job where you're fully doing entertainment or IP work all the time. So I was just hoping you could talk about your sort of path from doing general insurance litigation to where you are now at Cowan, which is a really top-ranked entertainment law boutique.
Thanks. So, like Erika said, I'm the perfect example of not having the traditional path of starting out doing what I want to do. To back up, right after graduation, I had a post-grad fellowship with a nonprofit called Start Small, Think Big, and they essentially worked just like the way my externship was at Brooklyn Law. We had a clinic called BLIT, which we basically worked with all startup companies that were more focused in technology. Some were fashion companies, some were musicians, and the post-grad fellowship worked the same way. So, but that's limited, it's only a few months. After that, I couldn't find any opportunities for a new grad looking to start into an entertainment firm. So there was a litigation opportunity. I took it. It was an insurance defense, and I ended up practicing for 3.5 years doing that. And I would say it was very important for me to just focus on mastering my craft. So what you have to keep in mind if you're not practicing where you want to practice, all your skills are most likely transferable. So if you're doing litigation, there's nothing that's not helpful. So it's being able to take and defend depositions, being able to get familiar with the court system is huge. So I was able to orally argue motions besides the drafting, and the drafting is, again, transferable. When you get into entertainment, you're drafting everything. And from there, I was able to hone down my skills and tailor-made my resume to focus, to make it look sexy enough for an entertainment firm or an in-house opportunity that would be interested in my skills and see that I kept my interests alive in what I focused at Brooklyn Law, and I stayed active in bar associations that were entertainment related, and I was able to get my job now.
Great. And Corey, you were also at a firm, but now you were in a really interesting role at Viacom. So if you could maybe, I think first, sort of explain your position at Viacom, which is a really interesting fellowship, and then what it was like transitioning from a firm practice to an in-house practice.
Okay, so this is a little like a big question. I'm going to try to answer it in a nice, concise way. My current position is actually, it's a full-time associate counsel role at Viacom, but they recently, as of last year, created a fellowship position. So the fellowship, my role sort of falls under this umbrella of a fellowship program, where for 2 years I get to rotate around the legal department and basically get my hands on all sorts of legal work. Right now I'm working primarily for Comedy Central and Paramount Network and TV Land, and doing all of their day-to-day transactional entertainment deals, structuring, negotiating, doing a ton of drafting, building my network in terms of meeting top industry attorneys. It's really just an ideal role, and it was a really great way, in terms of the transition that you talked about, Erika. I wasn't at a point in my career just last year where I was at a firm where I was like, oh, I have to leave, like I just can't stand this, like I don't want to do this anymore. I think I just knew that I was getting my time in at a law firm to eventually transition in-house. And this role sort of popped up. I learned about it through basically just being on LinkedIn one evening. And I saw like a one-line post about some fellowship that Viacom was starting, and I just looked into it and sort of followed that lead. And here I am in this position. The transition, I think, was very hard. One, because it was not something that I had sort of planned out. Like I wasn't in this period of like, oh, I know I'm going to transition in the next 6 months, like I want to go. For me, it was sort of taking a little bit of a risk and a jump into a role that was being newly formed within the organization. But I think that it is important to, one, like in my decision-making process, I thought several things. One, does this align with my interests in terms of IP law, in terms of media law, being in the business? And I said, absolutely yes. Will I work with top people in the industry? 100%. Do I see myself being potentially an in-house attorney? And I was like, yes. So I kind of just jumped into it. And every day is different. I really enjoy that. Next year, in terms of my fellowship, it'll be different than what I'm doing today. But I think it's a great opportunity. And if you're interested in doing it, Viacom is actually releasing applications for the program, I think this month or in a couple weeks, for the next round of candidates who would like to participate in the program. So, yeah.
Okay. So Jordan and Sean, y'all both sort of have an interesting career paths, because I think normally people think, I'm gonna be at a law firm, I'm gonna go in-house, I'm never gonna bill hours again, whereas, or at least that's how I feel, I'll never bill hours again, whereas, both of you, you were at a firm, you were in-house, now you're back in a firm, you started in-house. So I guess just for both of you, can you sort of just talk about kind of why you made that transition, and just thoughts on, sort of maybe how being at a boutique or a mid-sized firm like the ones you all are at sort of, I guess, aids in practicing or what your field is.
Should you go first? Okay. Yeah, so It's very interesting because I absolutely did not necessarily see myself going back to a law firm. The law firm that I started at was quite small. It was very mom and pop. There was 5 lawyers at any given time. I was in and out of landlord-tenant court. It was just a very interesting situation and not at all what I was really interested in doing at the time. And so when I got the opportunity at JP Chase, I was obviously very excited, and it was in the area of law that I wanted to practice, was on the intellectual property team. So I was there again for almost 4 years, but it got to a certain point where I felt like I needed more experience and I wanted more diversity. When you're in-house, your one client is the organization, it's the company, it's the firm, right? And so I felt like a lot of the issues that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I'd just kind of gotten into a routine, I'd gotten a little bit comfortable, and I was very nervous about transitioning to a law firm. This law firm here is vastly bigger than the one I was at with 5 attorneys. So I was worried about that transition, but I think it got to the point where I was like, I need more experience, I need more diversity. Now, I have many different clients with many differing levels and appetites for risk, right? At JP Chase, there was a playbook essentially. So here, while it's a little bit more stressful. It's definitely a little bit of a learning curve in terms of working with so many different clients, and I feel, on some days I might be starting back at square one to a certain extent. I was ready for more experience, and I felt like, the one thing, I don't know if you have this experience at Viacom, but the one thing that I felt like was our legal department was so big, and that was a blessing in the sense of there were so many resources, right? So I came in-house only being out of law school for a couple of years. And, the one thing that I continued to hear was that, if you go in-house, like they can't train you, right? There's no resources to train you. So I was definitely very concerned about that. But getting there were so many lawyers and so many resources. But I feel like you're kind of hired for a very specific task to a certain extent. So it can be a challenging situation in terms of moving, navigating through the different departments. If you're not super happy with what you're doing, transitioning to another department. And I felt like I was getting a little siloed. Just anecdotally, one thing that I was really interested in getting more experience in was claim substantiation, right? So, on the advertising side, if a brand is making claims about a particular product, really understanding all of the legal issues that, need to be assessed and, determining the risk there. And, there we had a really big, robust team that dealt with that issue. So while I was able to get some experience after I kept raising my hand, I just felt like, coming to a law firm would be a really great opportunity for me to really jump in 2 feet. Here, we're all dealing with those types of issues. Here, there's that infrastructure where we're, participating in CLEs that are really catered to those, particular issues of our practice group. So that's really where I started to get the itch and say, okay, I've learned, I think what I've gotten out of this, what I can get out of it, and it's time to move on.
Largely the same reasons as Jordan. It was tough for me to leave my last job at Braun Studios. They're one of the hottest independent film production companies in Hollywood right now. So to make the decision to leave was tough, but just echoing what Jordan said, it was about time for me to get training somewhere else. Like, you have one client, it's the company. Yeah, you might be dealing with corporate issues within the company and dealing with outside attorneys. And, you're dealing with a lot of different issues, but it's all still for this one person. So, I thought I was getting a skill set in a very narrow way. So that I didn't like. And in-house, it's tough to move up when you start out in-house, in my opinion. A lot of the, VPs or executives of some of these media companies, they start at a law firm. They get that law firm experience, and they enter that position in-house at a higher, level than I did, just starting out at the bottom of the pot. So, I was getting to a point where I understood everything I did. Like, I was flying solo. I was able to do everything on my own. But, I still was left very unsatisfied because, the role above me, someone was there and they did their job well and they weren't retiring. So I didn't see myself moving up, in the next 5 years. So, the not having room for growth, wanting to work on more diverse matters, money has a bit of an issue in it too. I have a family, 2 kids, so, the money they pay you at a firm is probably better than what they pay you in-house. So, there were a few reasons that go into it, but I do appreciate my in-house position because it allows me to do my job better today. Like being able to see how a movie or a TV show gets made from like it being an idea or it just being a book or an article to it getting on screen. That process is no longer abstract to me. I'm able to really know how to do it. So, I do value my in-house experience a lot, but where I was in my career, it was time for me to make a switch. I also worked in HBO legal, started my junior year in college, so I had some experience there. I worked there my junior year, my senior year, first year of law school. I went to Viacom actually for a little while, an in-semester internship. I was a law clerk at the firm I'm at now, for the balance of my law school 10 years. So, I bounced around a lot. So I was trying to find the right fit for myself and seeing all of these places, and I thought this was it for me. But I do think it's important to see different places and learn different things.
Can I just add something really quickly? Just thinking about in contrast to them making their transitions from in-house back to a firm, I think obviously a lot of the comments that you both shared are 100% true. There are benefits on both sides. The reason why I decided to go in-house, just to add a little bit more flavor, was to Sean's point, was to really gain that on-the-ground experience. I felt like in my role at the firm, I was handling litigation issues where the contract, there was a breach of contract, there was an issue, there was a claim. You're dealing with everything at the very end, and you're kind of coming in and cleaning up the mess that has been made. And there's nothing wrong with that. That can be very fulfilling in terms of working with different clients, but I knew that I really enjoyed the creative process, and that if I wanted to specialize in terms of going into media law and entertainment, at some point I would need to have that really first-hand knowledge of working with the production companies, of being in-house and hiring the talent and doing EP deals and all of that, and I'm getting that experience right now. I think in terms of when I look out and think about my future, am I going to maybe stay in-house? Perhaps. Will I go back to a firm? Perhaps. And I think that's a decision that I'll make when the time comes. But there are certain benefits, and you have to think, one, where am I in my career? I think the points that we've all made were just feeling like being an attorney is a process, right? Like you're going to gain fundamental skills at every stage of your career, and it's about being able to assess what you need and why you need it and why those skills that you're hoping to gain from a particular position are important now or will be important in the future. So there's a little strategy in it. And for me, being in-house right now, because of the nature of my role, I'm able to sort of step into the in-house position, but I necessarily haven't fully committed to just one role because mine is moving and it's very fluid. So that's the benefit, but I just think clear, think strategically about whether you want to be in-house or whether you want to be in a firm, and when and how you do it for your own personal needs.
No, that was really great. So you touched on something that I was going to talk about later, but it was a good jumping off point. So a lot of times I talk to a lot of law students or early career attorneys, and they'll ask me, they're like, well, I want to just get a foot in the door in entertainment law. So should I take a paralegal role or a contract coordinator role, or something that's not legal as an attorney role, but gets me at a fashion company or at a record label? So I'm curious. I have pretty strong feelings about that, but I'm one person. So I'm really curious as to what all of you think, given that we have a mix of different career paths and everything like that.
Anyone want to go first?
So I'm one who says, the entertainment industry is tough to get into. So if you can get a role, regardless of what the role is, I think you should take it. When I was at Braun Studios, they were a startup. So when I first got there, they weren't what they are when I left. I was just telling Jordan, I didn't even have an office. I sat in a hallway by the main door. I couldn't even focus. I had to have like noise canceling headphones on all day long, because there are people, this is a law firm suite, but there are people coming in and out all the time, and I'm just like randomly there on a desk in a computer. So, but they promised that I would get, experience, and I wouldn't be paid much, but I'd get a lot of experience. So, I took it, and it led to amazing things. One of my coworkers now, she started as a contract administrator at our firm, and she did really well, and they needed an associate and ended up hiring her. We have someone that happened to in our corporate group. So, if you work hard, you're gonna work your way up. Just make sure you're working hard, you're the best person in the room, and don't be afraid to take that job, because your work will speak for itself, and it'll start to open up new doors. Once you're in, it's easier to maneuver, but getting in is the hard part.
I appreciate Sean's opinion, the views. So I was at a point in my personal career where I considered it heavily when I was still doing insurance defense, and I was ready to go. And there were just, I would say, it's not a hard yes or no. You have to do your due diligence, I think. You have to make sure, if you're willing to take a paralegal role or a legal coordinator role, you have to know where you're going. So if it's, say it's a company, an in-house company, know the people, get to know the people, reach out to somebody that used to work there, take them out for coffees and get to know the inside of the business, and what's the likelihood of you actually moving up. And things could be different from 2 years ago to what it is at the time you're currently thinking and moving backwards to then hopefully propel forward. So it is a huge risk, and I decided to just wait it out and perfect my craft, and it ended up working for me. If I didn't, there was a time when I almost left and took something that would have been less years of experience that the firm was looking for, and I would have missed out on a trial that I did as sole counsel at my last firm. So, and that experience of being sole counsel so young was attractive when I was applying for my current position now. Every interview I went on, that's what everyone spoke about. And you just really have to think about, what are the risks that you're taking? What's the likelihood of you actually moving forward, and how long it would take you to get there? So as long as you do your research and you know what you're getting yourself into, then you can make your decision on that.
I'm going to just say I don't have a stance one way or the other, although I think I lean more towards not taking a role like that, particularly, and I'm just going to call it what it is, particularly being an attorney of color. I think it could be hard because there aren't a lot of us in this industry, and you don't want to get pigeonholed into a role where people sort of just say, oh great, she does a great job in that role and she's going to stay there, where they're not going to be behind you. It can be tough. I think what I'll add to what's already been said is that you have to think about where you are in your career. If you're a law student and you have an opportunity to work in-house and to get some legal experience, like for example, so I'll give you a little personal background on me. I had accepted a role out in LA to go to Paramount Studios my 2L summer. And I was super excited about it, but as I thought about doing it, I realized, wait, they're not paying me enough money for me to live in LA. How am I gonna get out there? I also need a car. And I was also going through some personal things with my family at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a dream role. And I don't think this is gonna be a reality for me. And in a matter of a week, I said to myself, wait a minute, I need to find something in New York City, because that's just what was happening. And I just put everything out there into the universe, sent my resume around, used my network, and ended up landing an opportunity at NBC Universal with their litigation department for that summer. It was like an act of God. I don't know what happened, but it came through, and I was able to, unfortunately I had to renege on the Paramount role, but I was happy that I was able to step into something. The reason why I bring that up is because it was a 2L summer position, right? So it wasn't like everything was on the line. If I stepped in, I could get experience in the industry, and if it didn't work out, okay, I still had another year of law school. But let's say, for example, if you are 3 years out of law school and you've, been practicing in some form or shape and you decide to take a paralegal role, I would advise everyone against that, unless you just really need money to feed your kids or like you have like a family need. Like if you're 3 years out of law school, you shouldn't be stepping into a paralegal position. You should be getting, like Christine, really solid foundational skills and utilizing them in terms of creating your narrative when you finally do come up for that opportunity that's in the industry. But just really, really try to think about where you are, and that's what I'll add.
Yeah. Well, that sort of segues into something I wanted to get into for the law students in the room. I think another question I've been getting a lot recently is, I talk to a lot of students who are interested in entertainment. It's their 2L summer. I think we all know 2L summer is generally when you are trying to do something that will secure you, hopefully permanent employment after you graduate. And so people will say to me, well, should I work at a firm at 2L summer or should I pursue in-house because, in-house is really where I want to be. And I usually will advise people that the in-house opportunity will always be there, whereas, a firm is a really solid training experience. But again, would really like to hear from all of you and kind of what advice you might give to someone in that situation.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So in terms of internship, my personal experience, I had 4 internships when I was in law school. One of them was kind of after I graduated. 3 of them were in-house. But, I feel like I was unique in my perspective where I, at the time, felt like I knew I didn't want to go the law firm route. Everyone was gunning for those big law firms. And, from what I had heard, from what I understood, in-house would be a great fit. So, for me, it led me to this position today. I had a little bit of an unconventional path, and I can't say that, it was, not the best decision. I still felt like I got some type of training. But, in-house, like I was mentioning before, even once you're, into the profession, there isn't the infrastructure that's really set aside to train you. So, kind of at the point, where I was at when I was interning in school, I didn't know what I didn't know to a certain extent, and I wasn't having those conversations with a lot of my friends, some of my friends who were at law firms to really understand what their day-to-day was like and what type of training they were getting. So, that's one thing that I would say is, as you're going through this process, to talk to people and to really understand what the internship program looks like. But yeah, I had a good time in-house, and the in-house legal departments that I had interned for were much smaller than what JP Morgan Chase was. I think you'll find a lot of companies, their legal departments are like 4 people strong. So there was a little bit more of an opportunity for me to get some actual experience there, but I'm sure that's not true, everywhere.
I guess I can add my comments. I'm trying to think in terms of what you need to think about as a 2L summer. I'm going to be honest. Look, it's hard out here to get opportunities. Like, that's the reality. Sometimes we have our dream positions and we're applying and we've sent out 50 resumes and we haven't heard back from the vast majority of them. Look, I lived that life. I was there. I'm still living it sometimes, as you're trying to find what's right for you and you hope you get that call back. So I would say cast a broad net, apply in-house, apply to roles at firms. Like, do everything that you possibly can within your power, because I think that's the best insurance policy that you can have. So I would say that. And when you get offers back, then evaluate. Then go to your trusted, call your mentors. I can think vividly of, like, the summer issue that I was telling you guys about. I called 2 of my close contacts. One was an attorney in-house, another one was another at a firm, and relied on their insight to help guide me in my decision-making. So, one, take the opportunities as they're given, because I think that that's just the reality that we're in, especially in New York City. It can be very, very difficult, and it's even more difficult in this industry. I think that you need to be realistic about your personal needs. So, for example, can you take a role that doesn't pay? Where some people might be able to, and they can still pay their rent and, live their life for the summer. I always knew that I needed to have financing. So I only applied to things that paid me or that I had fellowship opportunities to support. The other thing is when you think about graduating from law school, do you have a ton of law school loans and debt? And some people might say, yeah, I really do want to be in-house, but that firm position is going to give me the security for me to be able to pay that back maybe sooner or quicker. So in terms of making your decision, there's a lot that goes into it. And the other thing I'll add, I'm just trying to think what else. I think the substantive experience that you get is also really critically important. Every single role that I've had in my life, I sort of think about what substantive skills am I going to get out of this position? What will it look like on my resume? And I think about that going into the role because that will help to guide my journey. It'll help to inform the types of projects that I ask to work on, the individuals that I seek out within the organization and connect with. So it's about having your goals aligned up front. And that way, you can sort of take any role and fit it into your narrative. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing insurance litigation, but yet you've somehow been able to gain all these skills, you can pitch that in the right way on your resume and in an interview for something that's completely different 6 months down the line. But just definitely have your goals set up and get that really substantive experience under your belt for a 2L summer position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the mom. Oh, wait, so you go, because I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be talking.
To piggyback off Klori, I would say definitely write a list of your goals that you're trying to accomplish for that summer, and I use that tactic throughout my career. So every new position, write a list of goals which you're looking to accomplish at that moment. And I know with our internship program now at Cowan, all of the interns do that now. So we have a list that got passed around to all of the associates. Every intern that we have for this semester, we have a list of their goals of what specific tasks they want to work on. So we have the corporate group, we have the litigation group, we have the transactional entertainment group. Some people are interested in all of them. Some people know that they definitely want to do corporate. So whenever we have assignments, I know, okay, this legal research issue, I can pass this on to this intern because she wants to do litigation. So definitely be very vocal about what you want to do, because when you're interviewing for an internship, again, you want to make sure that you're getting out of it what you're seeking to learn. So definitely have a list of goals and just choose whatever option works best for you, whether that's in-house or at this firm.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember, I cannot remember the name of the firm, but I was like a third year at Proskauer. I didn't like it. I really wanted to be doing more entertainment work. And I met with this black partner. And he was like, you can come work at my firm, but you have to come, like, I don't pay. Because, like, you can come work here for 6 months for free. I mean, I have Harvard law grads who come and do that. And you went to Georgetown, so, you got to prove yourself. And I thought about it, but then I was like, one thing my therapist says to me all the time is, like, always think about, are you trading one type of stress for a different type of stress? Mm-hmm. So she was like, you're stressed because you don't like your job, but you're just going to be swapping out that stress to not have any money. And so I think to piggyback off what y'all said, like, it really is about having your goals and what's important to you to make sure, like, you're not jumping from a situation that has this bad element and just swapping it out for something else. So I think one thing I've heard throughout the panel is the importance of talking to people, mentorship, getting feedback. So I would say, if all of you, are there any organizations or conferences or places where you have gone to really build your network and gain mentors in this industry? And what would be advice for people who are trying to build a network in this industry?
Christine should go.
Because I'm part of everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, tell them.
Tell them.
Well, I will say for the law students in the room, join everything, because they're either free or $20. So join them, because they will not cost that much later on. You will know they are $200 a year. But seriously, I would say for me, the New York State Bar Association, the Entertainment and Sports Law section is very active. They have a subgroup within EASL that has a tailored section for every type of entertainment interest that you can think of. So between music, I think there's 2 subgroups in the music groups. Then there's film and TV, fine arts, digital media, there's everything. And they have meetings every month. They put together panels every month, and a lot of CLEs that are very useful. And a lot of hot topics are discussed, and it actually has helped me with my practice at work. I would also say BSLA, the Black Entertainment Sports Law Association. They have less frequent events, I know, at least in New York, There's the mid-year conference, I think it's April, it's coming up.
Yeah.
And then the annual conference, it's always somewhere nice and warm, in either October or November. But there's the Young Lawyer Division within that, and I think they meet quarterly or so. There's the Copyright Society, if anyone's interested in copyright, they're also very active to get actual practical skills. What else? City Bar.
Yeah, City Bar. I'm going to take a different angle because I think what Christine mentioned is a bunch of like industry-related, IP-related organizations, and I think 100% you should be a part of at least one of them, and especially as a law student, because you're right, the prices are just, it's so cheap, or some of them are free, and you should just do it and just follow the emails and get information and just see what might interest you. But if you're not doing that, what you should mostly be doing is creating a network out of the people that are in your life. So for me, I always look at networking as, one, every single position I have ever had, I maintain those relationships like money depends on it, my life depends on it. Like I can call every single boss that I've ever had in my career, and I know that I can utilize them as a reference. That's important. Also, don't neglect building those relationships with people who are in your law school class, who are in your specialty classes. A lot of opportunities that I learned about that were in the space came from fellow students who also studied IP law at Cardozo, who would be like, oh, well, I had a friend who interned here, and they're looking for somebody to fill the role for the spring semester. Here goes the email address, send something off. That sort of day-to-day networking and having people who are in your circle who know what your interests are is critically important. I cannot say it enough. Relationships matter as an attorney in New York City, but they matter particularly in this industry and in this space because it's such a competitive industry. Like, everybody wants to be in it. And the people who get chosen for those roles are the ones who have contacts. When someone goes to interview and they say, oh, like, I see Corey's name on it. Does anybody know her? Well, yes, they better, because that's the only way I'm going to get the role. But I'm being honest. Like, there are some people who say, oh, I want to be an entertainment lawyer. I want to be a trust and estates lawyer. Whatever you want to be, you need to make sure that other people know that that's your dream and they can speak on your behalf. So whether that's joining those sorts of organizations or working with your fellow classmates and alums and being part of like the Black Law Students Association or the MBBA, find your people, find your tribe, and keep them close.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I am the opposite of you, where I feel like I didn't join any organizations when I was in law school for whatever reason. Certainly participated in some of the programs, but networking for me has always been this like awkward thing, and I'm sure some people in the audience can relate. So for me, I did exactly what you said. I made sure that everybody that I was interacting with on a daily basis, my friends, my roommates, my family, knew that I was interested in this area of law, and that's how my opportunities came. I think 2 internships, I got just cold calls sending my resume in, but every other opportunity, including the one here at Davis Gilbert, has come from people in my personal network, knowing what type of law I'm interested in and what my practice area is.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything everyone said. I couldn't say it better myself. Networking is important, to getting a job, getting clients once you have a job. You have to get to know people, be personable, be helpful, all the above. So, very important.
Yeah, and I would just add to that in terms of being personable and being helpful. I feel like sometimes we can get very short-sighted and very focused on what we want to do, and I would, advise all of the, more junior attorneys, law school students, if you're given an opportunity to intern somewhere, the answer is yes. Not necessarily with respect to that job, the opportunity, but once you get in the door, somebody might ask you to do something that you're not particularly interested in doing, or you feel like, is not going to provide you with a transferable skill, but I feel like knowing for them to know that you're the person that's going to raise your hand, that's going to say yes, is like, okay, you did the grunt work, you took this opportunity that, you did this work that you really want to do, something came across my desk that I really think you're going to be interested in, and it's yours. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. And I'll just, because I think sometimes, or at least when I was younger in my career, I was also a little bit awkward in networking. So I will do a plug for the City Bar. So the City Bar has like committees that are focused on specific topics. So they have an entertainment law committee, they have a sports law committee, I think they have a copyright committee, they have a trademark. And I think the thing about the committees that are really great is that you meet once a month. So you just, by virtue of the fact that you see all these people once a month, you just start to build very like natural relationships with them. And like the current role that I have at BMI is through 2 contacts from the Entertainment Law Committee when I was on it. And the other thing, to your point, is to tell people what you're looking for. You know, I was at a firm, I was sort of getting pushed out of my firm, I needed to go in-house. I probably wasted a month just cold applying for jobs. And then I was like, wait a minute, I really need a job like in the next 2 months. So I like got real with people. I was like, I need to get a job in the next 2 months, and this is what I want my job to be in. And that's when people actually were like, oh, you gave me a specific, and now I can help you because you gave me something specific. So
One last thing.
Go ahead.
Hold on.
2.
Okay. And I know we talk about networking all the time, right? It's just like this topic that just comes up, and people just say so much about it. But I think what's important in networking is to think about it as like a daily task that you do. Like it doesn't have to look one way, it doesn't have to be exactly what we said, whatever makes you comfortable. Like for me, I really enjoy meeting people one-on-one. So I'm quick to be like, let's get coffee. Because I love, whether it's 15, 20 minutes, that works for me. Like I'm not necessarily the person who, like even though I enjoy being in a big room and networking, like I'm way better about being able to continue that conversation at a later date. And the point that I wanted to make, following up on Erika, was by doing it every day and making it a habit, you have those relationships when you need them, right? Like you can't say, oh, I need a job, and then suddenly start emailing 20 people who you've never met before, who don't know you, expecting them to even respond or submit your resume. But if these are all people that have worked with you, or this person's like, oh yeah, I'm on a committee with her, or yeah, this person I went to law school with, I remember you from a couple of years ago. Those relationships are there, and it's important to be forming them consistently so that when you do need them, the ask is much more tolerable for the person on the receiving end.
To piggyback off Erika and Corey, it's very important to maintain and nurture the relationships that are valuable to you. So again, like my current position is also through connections. So it's one thing to meet someone at an event and then do your first follow-up email, maybe 2, maybe you'll meet for coffee one day, and then next thing you know, it's a year and a half later, and you might see a post at that firm, and then you check your email log to see when was the last time I spoke to her. Oh, 2 years ago. Maybe she'll remember me. It doesn't look good. So it's good to, every now, it doesn't have to be every day, but check in every now and then. It's easy to use a holiday. Happy New Year, just checking in. This is what I've been up to. What have you been up to? And just build, it becomes less robotic and more natural that way.
Yeah. We're at about the 45, 50-minute mark, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I don't know if I have a mic. So I'll take my mic, and if people have questions, we'll just pass it around. We'll make it work. So yeah. Questions?
I can be loud.
Okay.
Can you talk about the differences between the New York market and California Hollywood market when it comes to the entertainment industry? Are you guys barred in California also?
I'm not yet. Dreading it. Thought.
I'm not barred in California either. I haven't really practiced out there. I mean, this is probably the first role where I'm getting an opportunity to work with people out in LA. Half of my team is in the LA office, so we're constantly going back and forth. I would definitely say that LA, New York definitely has an entertainment and IP space, but LA is home, right? Like, if you're in media and television and film, it's worth your while if you want to have a contact to take an internship out there or to try to find some folks who are working within companies, because if you could see yourself maybe practicing in California one day, why not? There's a ton of contacts out there, and a lot of companies have an immense amount of positions. I feel like, Netflix, for example, their legal department in New York is very small, but they have a ton of legal roles out in LA. So just consider that when you're looking.
And also, when you're looking, if the opportunity has 2 offices, that's something to consider. So you might be presented with an opportunity to even just work on one project in the LA office and see if that is an area you'd be interested in moving to later on down the road.
I'd say from my experience, it's pretty different. Us in New York, we have like a stigma about Hollywood attorneys. It's pretty funny. Always make fun of them, but it's tough in New York. You'll find that a lot of in the film and television space, a lot of attorneys have this like broad knowledge base where, you know, they can represent a writer, you know, who's you know, creating a TV show, or they can represent a director in a feature film, or they can represent a financier who's investing in a movie. Because there's not like that big entertainment market out here. Whereas in LA, you know, you have attorneys who make a living off of just representing talent. You know, they only know how to get, you know, their client on screen, whether it's a TV show or a movie. But if you ask them to, you know, negotiate a sales agreement to sell the movie, they probably couldn't do it. So, you know, being in New York, it's a little tougher. I think the expectation is for you to have a very broad knowledge base because of, you know, the market compared to the market out in LA.
I would say the production side might be better here in terms of like what Sean said. Just from the few projects I've seen run through my office, a lot of the talent, like you said, is out in Cali, so a lot of the deals that are negotiated, we're representing a lot of the production teams out here.
I will also, this is kind of tangential to the question. I think people also always just think about New York and LA when they're thinking about this field. But, you know, for example, you know, all of BMI is headquartered in New York. Our largest office is actually in Nashville. And you're seeing, at least on the music side, a lot of labels and places like Cobalt move to Nashville because it's cheaper. You have a huge music presence there. You know, obviously Atlanta. I believe it was either Pandora or Spotify has got a job about they're hiring attorneys there. So if you
Atlanta has a lot of work because
Yeah.
of the tax credit. So
yeah.
if Atlanta is home, there might be a lot of positions there.
Yeah, I mean Miami. I mean I know on the music side we're seeing a huge explosion on like the Latin sort of Latin trap, Latin R&B. Miami and Puerto Rico are becoming more important offices for us. So you know, obviously New York and LA are where the big hubs are, but also maybe think about cities beyond that. And I do have to pass the mic so that the video picks it up. So otherwise, we'll.
First of all, thank you to the panelists for taking the time out. I feel like this question would be particularly concern Erika and Klori. So just to give a bit of context, I'm an attorney in Nigeria, and I practiced in Nigeria for a few years before I came down. I did some IP in Nigeria, and I wanted to particularly stick myself in IP, which is why I moved to New York. So I'm wondering how much work in Africa, as it were, or just on the continent generally, you know, both Viacom and BMI does, because I'm sort of trying to ensure that whatever knowledge I get from New York, I can transfer back home. So
I'm trying to think, and I don't want to give you the wrong information because I still am fairly new at Viacom. I'm happy to follow up with you and sort of ask internally about that question. Obviously, it's a global company. I do know that we're doing work, you know, across the world. But in terms of how much IP work we're really doing and what that amount is, I don't want to answer it right now and misspeak.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I mean, the one thing that I will say, if you're maybe trying to be forward thinking, so BMI, for those of you who don't know, BMI, we are a performance rights organization. We pay your royalties when your music is played publicly. And actually, international revenues account for 30% of our revenues. So when we had our annual meeting in December, we actually talked about, you know, music streaming hasn't really made its way to African countries yet, the way it is in the U.S. and Europe. So people really view like the Middle East and Africa as places where you are eventually going to see an uptick in streaming. So those are strategic places. So I think if you could get experience in, you know, music licensing, because people think it's going to eventually pop in those areas. It's slower moving. The adoption of streaming has just been slower moving than it has been here in the U.S. So that may be something you could. And in terms of the work we do, we have relationships with the PROs in African countries. We have reciprocal relationships, but that's really the extent of the work that we do over there.
And related to your question, I think there is an emerging entertainment market out there. With respect to Nigeria and Ghana, I know that there are a ton of attorneys going out there, pretty much on a monthly basis, trying to gather up these clients now, while they're at this ground stage, because there's some interesting content coming out of those countries. So just with respect to those two, those are only two I hear about, but you have a lot of lawyers going out there trying to grab clients, because there's some great content coming from there.
Oh, could you, I guess, sorry.
Does she have a mic, or?
No, here we go. Sorry, we're making it work.
Thanks for coming out. I've got a question for you. So for all of you, switching in between entertainment jobs and talking about networking and maintaining those connections specifically, how do you switch in between jobs while not kind of burning those bridges, practically speaking? Whether or not you wanted to be there the whole time. I'm sure you didn't go to your interview and say, hey, this isn't my ideal job, but when you're switching between jobs, how do you do that, practically speaking, without saying, thanks, but no thanks?
That's funny. So my last job, they weren't happy that I was leaving, like, by any means. It was a very awkward day, to say the least. I don't think my supervisor spoke to me for a few days after I told him. He was really pissed. That's probably not the right way to handle it, so I'll say that. But ultimately, people understand. Employers are going to understand real life. So most of the time you're leaving for some real bona fide reason. Like, you're not just saying like, oh hey, I'm kicking you to the curb. I have life made here. I'm just gonna jump to this next place. There's some real reason. You need a jump start in your career, which that's your life. It's your career, or you started a family. Let's say in my case. So usually when you jump to another place, or you turn down an offer, whatever it is, it's for some reason that the employer, this person, is gonna understand. Like, yeah, they have these cool titles, but when you strip all that down, there's still people that struggle with the same things that we all struggle with. So, so long as you communicate it properly and handle the process, with integrity, it'll work itself out.
I'll just sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say, in terms of treating the process with integrity, yeah, when you leave, just make sure you leave them in the best position you possibly can. Not that the day that you give your notice, you're like, I'm out, and try to wrap up the work that you're doing. Thank you notes, have closing meetings with people. I would say my experience leaving Chase was very unexpected. I know my boss was not expecting it, or our team at all. And after the initial shock, we worked together, and I was very communicative about, I really want to leave you guys in the best position. I'm so appreciative of this experience. I learned so much. And we still keep in contact. I've only been here for a few months, but so far it's been good. And I feel like, if ever down the road in the future there's another opportunity that comes up, they'll keep me in mind.
Yeah, I was basically going to say the same thing. I think the process for me was extremely difficult. I was also in a position where no one suspected that I was leaving, that it just wasn't a thing. And when I walked into the partner's office and told him, he kind of looked like I had punched him in the face, literally. And I think to their point, it's just really important to handle that relationship with care. For me, it was a very difficult decision just because I knew that it was so surprising for so many people. But I think went in there with confidence because I had already decided in my head why I was making this decision. And certainly did all of the phone calls to important people who had sort of helped me along the way and gave them that reasoning that I'm not leaving because I dislike this, but it's because I'm furthering my career, and I think that was really important for them. And I think for others, depending on their role, they don't need to know all the reasons. At the end of the day, who's going to root for you more than yourself? So you have to take positions when they come along and when it's right, and just nurture those relationships as best you can, and keep it moving, because that's just the nature of the game.
I'll just say, I knew I was ready to go. But you don't have to be vocal about how ready you are to go. Like everyone said, definitely, with integrity. Leave on a positive note. Finish up anything that's feasible to finish in the time period that you're setting yourself to leave. So that might incorporate other tasks that you have on your plate that they are expecting done from you, but you have to let them know. You might want to pass this on to so-and-so because I'm out in 2 weeks. So I'm all about lists. So I had my list ready when I had to speak with my partners at my last firm. I really appreciate all the experience that I got. They asked me for feedback, what they could improve, later on for the associates they were going to have to hire later on. And, so it was a good conversation. It was good.
Also, on the upfront, I think we're all talking about in terms of leaving a role and sort of how do you handle the relationships in that. But I think there's also something to be said for the process of when you have multiple offers that are on the table, right? I know I've been in that position, and maybe you interviewed, you had your final interview at one place, but then there's this other interview that's coming up next week, and that might be a better role. One might pay more money than the other. You want to negotiate. I think that can be really, really scary and a tough place to be, right? Because you're excited, you're like, yes, I'm finally getting it. But then it's like, oh, shoot, how do I handle this? And sometimes, not that you want to be in this position, but I will say that at one point in my career, I had to accept a position because I knew I needed a job, but I was holding out for something else. And when you make that phone call to that organization that you had maybe accepted the role and tell them, I'm not coming, that can be very, very difficult. But you have to be mindful of the fact that if this role is the new one that came in, if it really is better for you, you just have to pick up the phone and just pull yourself together and get all the might and confidence and have a very nice and respectful conversation and thank them for the opportunity and keep it short and sweet. But do it, you know what I mean? Because some people are too afraid of upsetting other people, and they'll turn down something that could be really great for the sake of not wanting to go through that confrontation of a 5-minute phone call. Not that you should do it all the time, because obviously your reputation matters, but step up to the plate if you have to.
Yeah, I was just going to say 2 things. So I think on the flip side, even if there's a job, let's say you really wanted that job and you didn't get it, also reaching out and following up. So, I actually interviewed at your firm a couple years ago, and I didn't get it, and I was real hurt. I was like, damn, I really want to work there. What can I do? But I actually ran into a couple partners from the firm at a conference, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember you. Let's definitely stay in touch. You don't know where you're going to be in a couple years. We don't know if things might change on our side, which I wouldn't have thought to do, right? I was like, well, I didn't get the job. But you don't never know what the dynamics are, maybe why you didn't get that role. So I think staying in touch, even for positions, if it's a company you're still really interested in, just doing in touch. And I think it also just goes back to the relationships. There is a partner, my partner mentor from my second firm. I probably just reach out to him quarterly just to say hey, how you doing? What's going on with the kids? You want to get together? Or I saw this thing that was of interest to you. Being like me, I feel very confident. I would never go back to a firm. But I do. But I also let me just keep that option. Let me just maintain my relationships in case, I need an exit. So, yeah. I think I will say, I think we have time for one more question. At least I'll be here. I think the other panelists will try to stay. We have wine and food, so there'll be some more opportunity to ask questions, talk one-on-one, but we'll take one more question.
Hi. Hi guys. So first I want to thank you, Erika, because the questions you asked, I feel like you literally plucked them out of my brain and put them on paper. And your guys' responses were so detailed that, and you just helped. So, but here's my question. So you, Kristen, or this is for everybody as well, but I am in insurance defense, which is not at all what I'm trying to do, and I'm ready to go.
That's the first step.
Yes. Admitting that you're ready to go. I'm ready to go. So you mentioned earlier about being pigeonholed, so I do feel like I have been pigeonholed in such a short amount of time, because I've only been practicing for a year and a half. But my second question, second part of the question is, how do you get over that hurdle of being pigeonholed, but then when you're applying, people want 2 or 3 or 5 years of experience, but you only have 1 or 1.5 or 2 or something like that. So that's my question.
I would say When I was working in insurance defense, I felt like I was working a double job because I, especially with it being litigation, those hours can be forever. I still stayed active in the networks that I felt like were the most valuable to me, that I felt like I could definitely get something out of it, and still stayed up to date on Law 360, what happened in trademark, this week, and have talking points with people. So when I did go to a conference and everybody in the room are practicing entertainment attorneys, and oh, you're in insurance defense, what are you doing here? And I had things to talk about, and they remember you that way. So it's work, but still maintaining your networks of people that are in entertainment and other fields. You never know who knows who. And I would say if you have the opportunity at your job to take on a different task. So if you feel like you've been doing, I've been doing summary judgment motions forever, I want to take a deposition, or if there's a different client or a different matter that's going on that has a specific issue that's something you haven't learned yet, take it, offer to, I have time, or I'll make time to work on that. If somebody is in the middle of trial, if they'll allow you to just sit in, or even just helping with exhibits, anything that can, bring color to your everyday. So you can add those things, later on to your resume, and that's what sticks out.
The other thing I'm thinking really quickly is like volunteer lawyers for the arts.
Oh, yeah.
Opportunities that are like that, obviously they take additional hours from your day because you have to do it. If you're not in that space, your partner may not be like, oh, great, you want to go and help these artists in your off time, but doing things like that is really important, because I think if you're stepping in from one industry to the next and you're going to be interviewing, they're going to ask for your demonstrated interest, right? Like either you studied IP law in law school and you can talk about those classes and your passion for them, or you've done some sort of pro bono work. Or maybe you're at a firm where they do have an IP practice or a media practice, and you can just say, like, can I get my hands on one assignment, like to Christine's point. Just finding those opportunities within your current space, I think, is important, and just sort of building them up. And that way, when you do go in and you land an interview for a role that's in entertainment or IP, you're able to speak to those experiences as well as the substantive skills that you're getting in your day-to-day job.
And also, I had times where I did stuff on the side, so I know it's always hard to try to make time, but because I have so many friends that are in the industry, they're all creatives, somebody will ask, I got this talent agreement, or, something, and if you're comfortable enough, if it's something you actually know that you can review and give some insight or gain knowledge from somebody else, then taking on little tasks, whether you're doing it as help, and sometimes they don't always have money, or they don't always pay what they say they will. But those, that helped me too on my off time, at least just maintaining the necessary skills.
Yeah, and I would say for me, if anybody has an opportunity at a small law firm, again, speaking up, right? So I was able to have our firm register with volunteer lawyers for the arts, so I was able to kind of take on some cases when I was still super junior, and I had some support at the law firm to help me on certain matters. So again, if you have that opportunity, I know everyone doesn't, and maybe especially some of the bigger law firms don't, wouldn't be readily available to sign up for that. That's one way. Again, it's just, I think it's all about keeping your toes in the water, and again, having something to talk about, demonstrating an interest in the practice area when you go into those interviews. And I will say, I feel like our practice area is unique in the sense that, or in terms of, the fact that I feel like there's not a lot of junior opportunities, right? So the competition, a lot of us are coming from different areas where, we have transferable skills that we're trying to, discuss and talk about in order to get an entertainment job. I know when I was at Chase, my counterpart, he was hired a few months after me. We both did landlord-tenant law, right? Neither one of us. We both had a demonstrated interest in the practice area, very interested in media, but in terms of our first opportunity out of law school, both of it was, landlord-tenant litigation, and we both ended up getting into the profession. So, yeah, I would not let that discourage you. It's possible. It's absolutely possible.
I mean, I will say, like, I have a friend who has only done labor and employment law, but is actually in a couple weeks moving over to Loeb, which is a like mid-sized entertainment firm. And so like we had a strategy call, and I was like, let's just think really creatively, right? Because a lot of IP is litigation, and a lot of it is looking at statutes. A lot of it, if you're in the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, is dealing with administrative bodies. I was like, so just tell them. I was like, if you've been doing stuff before, like Department of Labor, NRLOB, you have the admin experience, and you can just take that to the trademark experience. I told him, I was like, I would say, like, if you're interested in this field, Law 360, they have a media entertainment section. They have an IP newsletter. I was like, go on there, do a search for Loeb, see what kind of cases that they're handling, if you can talk about that. If you're interested in trademarks, you can go on the USPTO. You can search for firms. You can see, like, whose trademarks they're handling. And I think if you can say, look, maybe I haven't been doing IP litigation, but I'm a really solid litigator, and I know the type of clients and stuff you're working on, that can just help you stand out, even if you're not necessarily doing it 100% of the time.
Also, one small little thing. You made a comment about job descriptions saying like, oh, you must have a minimum of 5 years or whatever. They always do that. Companies are always going to say that they want you to have like 5 to 7 years of experience, and ideally, they're probably looking for somebody who has 3. So I say if it's important to you and it's a role that you think could be really great, submit your resume, because I think it's more likely than not that when they say that, they're usually hiring somebody who doesn't check off every single box. And I know it's something that as women and as people of color, sometimes we can count ourselves out, and you have, your majority counterpart who's over here who's like, oh, I got 2 of those things on that long list, but I'm qualified. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why.
Right, they're casting a wide net
Yeah,
as well.
Exactly. So I'm just like, don't sit there and be like, oh man, like I don't have enough years of experience, because you might be the perfect person in terms of bringing experience. Like also in our industry, I think you see people who are like, oh, I was a musician, or I used to act in plays, and I have this, and it's not even like legal experience, but it's this passion that they bring to the business, and people pick up on that, right? So if that's your experience, speak about it. Don't be afraid to apply. Let them tell you no. And if you get the interview, just step in there and tell them every reason why you can think that you belong there, and don't hold back, because I think people do that too often.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, it is the last thing. No, but seriously, like, talk. So, like, with MBBA or other organizations, like, talk to people. Because, like, when I got my role at BMI, like, a lot of people applied. There are probably people who are way more qualified to do that job than me. But I had a friend who's at Sony, and so I said, what do I need to do for this interview? And he was like, there's this book that everybody in the music industry reads called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business. So he was like, you need to order that book on Amazon, you need to read the chapter about BMI, and then you need to tell them that you read it, which I did. And like when I got the job, my VP was like, we were just so impressed that you had read the book. Like she was like, and some of the other people in my office were like, yeah, after your interview, like the GC and the VP were like, oh my God, like this candidate came in and she had read the book, And so like it's I wouldn't have known that but for talking to other people. So I think if you are getting interviews, reaching out to people and saying like, hey, I'm interviewing at a fashion company or a music company, like what is just this little insider knowledge? Because you just dropped, I wouldn't have thought that was a big deal, and apparently that was the thing that made them be like, oh my God. So, all right, one last announcement.